Hi, welcome to the Break the Chain podcast. I'm here today with Gill Tietz. Gill is the creator of Sober Powered and the host of Sober Powered podcast. Both of those are incredible, and she's also got a master's degree in biology, so this is going to be a really interesting conversation today. Thank you for coming on the show, Gill.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great intro.
Sometimes they go a lot worse than that, so we got through that one. I'll try and make them not too long, just in case. So I'm hoping we can first talk about your story a little bit, because it's an interesting story, and then talk about the emotional and the physical components of addiction. Yeah. Awesome. All right, so if we can kick off with, if you can tell us a bit about your story, please.
Yeah, so I didn't start drinking until I was 22. I had one drink at 18, and I felt such intense shame during the drink even. And I had permission, and it was legal. I was on a vacation, so I wasn't like trying to sneak or anything. It was okay to have the drink, but I felt so much shame that I didn't drink again for years. And the only reason that I did start to drink was because I went to graduate school and everyone else drank. And I wanted them to like me. I'd been really bullied growing up, and I never had any friends, and I just wanted to fit in. So I started ordering what they were ordering. And it took a couple times, but the first time that I got a real buzz, I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense now, why people do this. And then it was just a mess. Quickly after that, I was on a date, and that was the first time that I did shots, and I got really drunk and really sick on a first date with this guy. It was awful, so embarrassing. We're still friends, though, so he forgave me. And I met my husband very quickly after I started drinking, so he's always witnessed it. And within a year, I was a daily drinker, and then less than a year after that, I realized something was going on because my tolerance had doubled. And I was a teacher before I worked in a lab, and I would come home and I would make these Cosmos, but they were in a pint glass, and 3/4 of it was vodka, and then most of the rest was triple sec with a splash of diet cranberry juice. So it wasn't like a Cosmo, it's like a glass of vodka, but it got to the point where I was drinking 2 of those a night. And when that started happening, I was like, okay, I'm probably drinking too much. And I was like, okay, I'll moderate, no big deal. I'll just moderate, I'll Google it and figure out how to do it. And I tried to moderate for 5 years, actually, even though I never succeeded. And I was so obsessed with it and doing research and finding articles about how wine is healthy for you and all this stuff to justify what I was doing. But it just kept getting worse. And I noticed, I think 3 years into my drinking, I noticed my mental health was getting worse. I was feeling really depressed. I was having trouble getting out of bed some mornings after drinking, and I decided that it was because of margaritas. And if I just didn't drink tequila again, I wouldn't feel depressed anymore. So I really believed that. I really did. So I stopped drinking margaritas, except for the occasional margarita. Just the thought process is and then, 3 years later, I got very depressed. I actually developed anxiety, which I've never had before. And then my depression kept getting worse and worse, and it became suicidal thoughts. And those started to scare me because I was afraid if I was home alone, what would drunk Gill do? Who knows? And I decided that I was going to take 90 days off. So if I don't drink for 90 days, that's the magic number. It's going to cure me, and then I will be able to moderate. And so I did the 90 days. I was so convinced that I was going to be able to moderate. And day 91 was actually my birthday. So I thought it was fate. So I drank on my birthday and I was like, yeah, let's go. Moderation. I got drunk on my birthday, but that's okay. It was just a mistake. And then I moderated for 2 months for the first time ever. And then we went on a cruise and we had the drink package. So I drank every day, from when I woke up basically to when I went to bed. I humiliated myself so bad on that cruise. It was awful. I have so many bad memories. I hiked up Mount Vesuvius in Italy, massively hungover, like holding in the throw up.
Oh my
and
God.
I did it though. I got to the top. And then I got home and blew up my life for a couple more months. Suicidal thoughts were back. Anxiety was back. It was all right there again. And then I realized one day, I was like, this is alcohol. Like, if I drink, I'm going to feel suicidal. And I'm going to be up with anxiety all night. And I finally accepted that. And that there's no hope for me for being able to moderate. I think the 90 days did a lot for me because that's a long time. It's not like I quit for 2 weeks and went back. You could still have some doubt. I quit for a long time and then went back and, was exactly the same. So one morning I had been like up all night thinking horrible thoughts about myself. And I was watching the sun come up and I was like, I can never drink ever again. And I felt so calm and at peace. And yeah, that was it. I never drank ever again after that. And it's been a year and a half.
Well done. It's amazing.
Thank you.
It's always amazing when someone has actually, stopped, because the decision to stop after you've been an addict is always miraculous, coming from a place of it being kind of impossible when you're in that place. There's a few interesting points that you mentioned throughout the story, and that's that you felt ashamed to have a drink in the beginning, which is, when you're already of age. And I have to ask why. Why do you think you felt ashamed to have a drink?
Yeah, so I watched a parent abuse alcohol as I was growing up, and there was a lot of shame for them. So I think that had an effect on me. And I just had a lot of shame and I didn't like myself. I thought all these horrible things about myself all the time. And I think just feeling a little bit of, it wasn't like a buzz after half a drink, but it was something and I wasn't expecting it. And my first thought was like, you're a bad person. You're bad, you can't do this. And yeah, it was weird. And then the shame was something that plagued me for all 7 years that I drank. That's kind of how the suicidal thoughts started, because I would stay awake with anxiety and then I would think, you're bad, you're a loser, you're the worst. Why can't you just, keep your word that you're gonna have 3 drinks and stop? You're pathetic, like all this stuff. And then eventually that became really scary thoughts. But yeah, the shame and self-hatred was always there for me. And I think for alcohol, that was always going to be a problem for me. I think it was an immediate problem. And yeah, just things aligned in my life. And once I felt the buzz, it was like, that was it. I was doomed.
So when you started drinking, I mean, you said, was it within a 2-year period you'd gone from nothing to drinking pints of spirit, basically almost pure pints of spirits within 2 years? Yeah. I mean, that's like, so. And I've listened to 2 podcasts that are on your website, and so I've got a little bit of the background story. But it's kind of like you said that you pretty much just as soon as you started drinking, there was never any moderation. It was just like a landslide from the beginning.
Yeah, It was weird. I thought, even though I knew this wasn't true, I thought while I was drinking that if I had a drink and I wasn't immediately drunk, that I was good to have another drink. And that always messed me up because I would finish my drink and I'd be like, oh, I'm not drunk. I can have another drink. But it hits you slowly. And then when you're having, that much, it all comes on really fast. And that was always a problem for me, like that date that I was talking about where I had shots. I had a shot and I was like, oh, I'm not drunk. This must be weak. And then someone else gave me another shot, and I was like, okay, I'm not drunk. And then eventually, like, all those shots, just punched me in the face, and I was super drunk. But yeah, I never understood, like, how drinking worked.
No, I find it a really unusual process. I remember when I tried alcohol, and the first thing I tried was like a Stella, like a lager or something like that. And I tried it, and I was like, what the fuck is that? That's awful. That's like the worst tasting thing I've ever tasted in my life. And everyone's drinking it. I'm just like, how are you drinking that? And then obviously, like, I didn't realize that they tasted differently and trying different things. And then tried like the Alka Pops, which is like the, alcohol for kids, basically. You know what I mean? It's just like a sugary candy kind of alcohol thing that's just like to get kids on the wagon, like, just like this is this is like an introductory drink. And sorry if adults still like that, because I know there's some stigma around it being a girly drink, but I used to like those. I used to like the girly drinks because I wasn't tough enough to drink lager. And I tried it, and slowly over time you get into it. But then I was like, when I drink, it'd be like, I wanted to be absolutely wasted. I mean, like, why do you drink other than to get drunk? Because for me, it's like, if I want to drink, I'm going to drink something that tastes nice. You have to be quite stubborn to actually start to enjoy alcohol, don't you? You really have to be stubborn, because it doesn't taste good. You learn to like it, but it's not nice.
What's weird for me is I didn't want to be drunk. Or that's what I told myself. I used to say all the time, I wish wine could be like 3 or 4% so that I could drink the amount that I drink and not get drunk. I actually didn't want to get drunk because I was humiliating myself a lot. I was very prone to blacking out. I got sick a lot, and I knew if I got drunk, I was doomed, and the whole night I was going to be anxious and hate myself. So I used to say, I wish I could just drink like weak wine and have the same feeling. But like looking back, I know that I showed up with a purpose, every time I drank, and it was just to drink as much as possible. But I really believed, like, I just want to be fancy and sophisticated and just drink a little bit of wine and move on. But that wasn't aligning with what I was doing every single time I drank. It was always the same.
Why is drinking a little bit of wine sophisticated?
Right? I really believed that. I
know,
did.
and it looks it, and you see someone drinking a little bit of wine, and you're like, oh, that's a bit sophisticated. Or maybe not anymore, but, it always was something that I would see, and maybe they're just showing off their self-control. I don't know. Because it is impressive.
Yeah, it is. People that are at a restaurant and they walk away and there's still wine in their glass, that is impressive. I don't know how you do that.
You don't like it that much, do you, clearly?
Yeah, they don't love it, it's fine for them.
People don't need it. You spoke in the other one, you spoke to bullying a lot, and you had a fairly tough time as a kid, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a normal childhood at school, like up until I was 9. And then when I went to middle school in 5th grade, I was just targeted for bullying. This really popular girl decided that she didn't like me. I don't know what I did. I still don't know. But she turned the whole school against me, and they actually used to form a circle around me at recess and pick on me until I cried every single day. And then eventually, like, kids kind of forgot that they were supposed to not like me, so they didn't intentionally, like, seek me out to be mean to me. They just ignored me. I think the worst of it was when I was a junior in high school, so I was 16. And I hadn't been in the cafeteria for lunch for a really long time. I used to hide in the bathroom or sit in the library if the librarians would let me. And I thought, it's been so long, maybe I can just like go sit and be quiet, and like kids won't notice me, but they'll just let me be. So I sat down with a girl who had been like friendly to me in my classes. And when I sat down, every single person at the table got up and left in unison. They all left. And I was sitting there like in shock. And one girl came back and she sat down across from me. And my first thought was like, wow, she's really nice. And like, this is going to be my best friend forever. And she looked at me and she said, why don't you just go kill yourself? Everybody hates you. And then she got up and left again. And I was like, I don't even know. I was so shocked by it. I never went back to the cafeteria ever again. And that was just like how I was treated for 8 years. So then when that's your experience growing up, you get kind of weird. And when I showed up to college, like I didn't trust that anyone would be nice to me, and I kept to myself. And it took probably a year and a half for me to loosen up and trust people again and slowly make friends. And now, I'm back to normal, my friendly, bubbly self, but it really changed my personality and it made me scared to talk to my peers for a really long time.
I imagine that everybody you tell that to has the same response as me, which is absolute shock. And just be like, yep. But Gill seems so nice. And it's just
that's what everybody says.
What was the deal? Was it just the unbelievable influence of one popular person in school that managed to do that to you and ruin that period of your life to a degree, certainly on a social level? Unbelievable. Yeah,
one person had a huge impact on my whole childhood. Like if she didn't go to that school, she went to a different school or something, or she didn't decide me, she decided someone else, my whole life could have been different. Like who knows what would have happened. I could have also started drinking much younger because I would have been invited to parties and stuff. So the bullying was almost protective. So you don't know, it could have been better, it could have been a lot worse, because once I started drinking, like it didn't develop, it was just there. So I can imagine if 16-year-old me started drinking, like that would have been horrible. I would have been, hooking up with guys and like drinking and hating myself, and maybe I would have tried harder stuff. And so it could have been really bad for me.
Definitely. I mean, with alcohol, it does kind of have a slow burn. You do get a longer shelf life than some of the heavier stuff.
Yeah, my husband and I talk about that, and he's like, everybody that you see, he watches a lot of the stuff in the sober community, like people going live on Instagram, and a lot of people that did drugs got clean really young. Not all of them, but a good amount of them. And people that drink, you can go for like 30 years and you can drink really hardcore. And it's just amazing, like what the body can tolerate, because that's 7 years of drinking that much was a lot. But some people drink just for their whole lives, and their body is so resilient.
But on the other side of that, 98% of alcoholics die of an alcohol or alcohol-related death, don't they? So it's kind of like, yeah. And that was something I was aware of, like through my addiction and stuff, is just like the pain, like the physical pains that I was experiencing in my body after, 10 years, but 6 years of hitting it really hard was just absolutely like, no, this is like immediately going to destroy your internal organs. Like it's actually like the physical pains was unbelievable, and the actual some of my friends have had like their organs replaced and stuff like that from it. It's just unbelievable. But with the alcohol thing, and because it's so socially acceptable, it just goes under the radar so much, and it's almost like promoted to drink, isn't it? Like, so I can't believe like the meme culture around alcohol. It's like at least no one's even telling you to stop doing it. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. I mean, so many people have had these experiences as well, these embarrassing experiences where, you see someone. I think when you see someone in that state, you actually don't really judge them that much. You actually just want to help them. But when you're on the receiving end of it, it's awful, isn't it? You just feel like it's the most embarrassing thing ever, even though generally people are quite nice and try and look after you in that. But it still has this really shameful effect. And one of the things, probably the thing that stood out the most from the podcast and what you just said a minute ago, is having a group of people around you pointing at you, hating you basically, because I had experiences like that as well, and I didn't really. I kind of brushed them off as part of a normal part of childhood, but God, when you look back and you just think, actually, that was devastating. What that did to me was awful. It gave you the message that the whole world hates you. Public
exactly.
Public shame. I think it's the most painful thing that you can actually experience. It's worse than death. Something I was thinking about, like, people literally commit suicide because they don't want to face public shame.
Yep.
It's unbelievably. I think people don't realise what they're doing to people through those sorts of things. I mean, what that girl said do in the cafeteria is unbelievable, isn't it? It's amazing how cruel kids can be. But
and they don't even think twice. Like, she is just living her life today. She probably doesn't even remember what she said, but I'll never forget what she said. It had a huge impact on me.
It's probably one of the things that plays over in your mind, isn't it? It's
easier now that I'm older, but in the beginning is awful.
Has doing what you do now made a massive impact? I mean, I found that, like, I've got all these people on social media. I mean, you kind of had them sort of sarcastically in the beginning. I don't know if you're like that. I'm weird. But I sarcastically add my enemies on Facebook. But then what's happened is, over the years, I've seen that they're kind of probably not that much of a dick as I thought they were, and they've kind of grown up a bit, and you can actually see that, and then actually reconnected and been like, oh, yeah, sorry.
I love that, actually, that you add them. I haven't reconnected with anyone. I'm scared to, actually. I deleted Facebook, I think, in my early 20s, and then I made a new one a few years later, but I'm scared to. And I made my own, like, new Instagram account for sober stuff because I was scared of the response from people. I was scared that they would judge me or make fun of me or, label me or not want to talk to me anymore. So, it's hard. I really fear being judged, I guess. I'm realizing as we're talking about this.
I definitely had that, like, so bad in the beginning with sharing these things to people who, because, a lot of these people are still in active addiction. I mean, like everybody that my audience is, I don't really deal with the sober community. I deal with the addicted community. That's kind of where I focus my attention because, you got to throw some seeds out, haven't you? And hope that some people kind of pick them up and plant them, or that they land in fertile soil somewhere. And, the level of judgment I remember going through in the beginning was just like, I think this is like, this is not going to go well. But actually, everything that came back from me sharing my story in a blog post to begin with was profoundly good. It was really positive and amazing. And I was just like, no one judged me. And I couldn't believe it. And I don't know what people, certainly no one said anything bad. And then as time went on, that's the first time I got the feeling like you've got to do more of that. Keep doing this. This is a good thing. So I kept doing it. And then, sure, over the past couple of years, I've had the occasionally placed hateful comment, mostly from people who don't know me, who I don't know who they are, but every now and then from someone I do know. But then when you pull on that a little bit and you're like, I wonder what that's all about, and just say, I'm sorry that, this, you've perceived this to be this way, and I don't know everything and I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to help people a little bit. And I'm sorry if I've upset you in any way. And they've usually gone, sorry about that. Keep doing what you're doing. Good work.
I think that's a really good point. There's always something behind someone, like, lashing out randomly at you, and it's easy to take offense and, think, wow, like, everybody must think I suck, or everyone must agree with this person. But there's always something behind it. And I think about times where I've been super judgmental or mean or something, and those were times that I was really, really miserable. So I try to remember that. Like, somebody was mean to me the other day on Instagram and said that I just pick up a book and read it for 15 minutes and call it my podcast. And she wanted to know if there was going to be any original content or should she not listen. And that was like ouch, like, wow. But when you think about it, it's like something's going on there for you to say that to a stranger, you know? And it's just a different perspective. And when you're drinking and treating yourself horribly, you can't think that way. You just take offense and get hurt.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of, I guess you kind of got to walk through it and have it happen a few times. And this doesn't just apply to us and what we're doing. This applies to people in the world dealing with people. You know, it's like people are nasty because they're in pain. There's no other reason. You know, they're nasty because they're hurting. So, you know, when someone's nasty to you, I mean, it's really hard not to take offense and take it personally. But generally, 99% of the time, nothing's personal. You know, it's like everyone's perceiving something based on how desirable or undesirable it is for themselves, you know, and yeah, I think it does allow you to have a little bit of compassion for people.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that I've learned in sobriety that I did not have before.
Something else you said was about drunk. You don't know what drunk Gill could do, and it's interesting, like how you know, it's like really obvious, like that's not me. You know, when I'm drunk, that isn't me. I found some people who kind of have, you know, trauma from when they're in their childhood. When they drink, that's when they get the blackout, and you actually get a completely different person, and it's just like a pain. It's like a personified pain body. You know what I mean? And it's like, and who knows what's going to happen? And it just unleashes chaos. Like certainly with my male friends, some of them when they drink, they just flick that switch and then it would just be chaos.
Yeah, exactly. And my version of that was just extreme self-hatred, like extreme, the maximum level of self-hatred. And that's just where I went every single time. And it was so exhausting like, to live that way, but I just kept doing it and I kept hating myself and I just hated myself more and more and more. It was awful. It was so much.
And you know, the amount of pain that you cause to yourself through, you know, mental and physical pain, don't you? It's just like, you know, you never know what's gonna happen when you do that, and you feel like saying to felt like saying to my friends, because of how kind of devastating it was from the drinking, just be like, some of them weren't even alcoholics. I wouldn't have said they were just binge drinkers, and when they would drink, they would just, you know, it'd go absolutely out of control. And I was just like, you know, like obviously, like it's totally hypocritical, but it's like your life would be so much better without alcohol, as mine would be without drugs at the time, you know. And I would have disagreed if you told me that, because I felt so insecure that I needed the drugs to feel like I was worthy of even like being in public or being funny or being popular, or, you know, it was like that was my shield. So yeah, totally hypocritical line of thought from myself, but it was just like, yeah, it's just like the amount of suffering you could like literally see linked to that thing. It's like you know, in the same pattern every time. It's like that, and then the blackout, and then chaos, and then, you know, people with broken noses, and you know, all this crazy stuff happening, and it's like, you know, it's but everyone's got to walk their own path and find their own way through that, haven't they? And it's hard to watch, you know, and I guess. Yeah. When you're an addict, you can't see your own shit really so much because you're so in denial, aren't you? Yeah. So you got sober. What was it like in the beginning when you first got sober?
It was tough. I had to go to work. I think day 2, I had to go to work. And I just put in my headphones and signaled to everybody, like, please leave me alone. And I just stayed by myself. I didn't talk to other people besides my husband. And I felt ashamed. I felt like, is this my fault? Like, my husband is a normal drinker. He has no problem. He's the guy that leaves the half a beer. And it's like, did I choose this? Did I do this? Am I a bad person? And I started reading about it. And when I wasn't working, but I was at work, I would just like look up stuff on Google and read papers about addiction, and that helped me a lot. I did have a lot of parties in the beginning because I stopped drinking in November, So there was like all the different holiday parties, and then a lot of people quit at the company I was working for. I quit too eventually, but so we would have like something at a bar to say goodbye to them. And I had people call me out when I got like a mocktail or something and I was just minding my own business. Someone would come up to me and she'd be like, "You're still not drinking?" Really loud, like in front of everybody. And then I wouldn't say anything. And she'd be like, why aren't you drinking still? What's going on? It's like, what do you want me to say? Why does a person stop drinking? You know, there's really like one reason besides being pregnant, but that's different. But there's really one reason that someone was drinking and now they're not drinking. And she just called it out. I had friends try to get me to start drinking again. I went to like a big Christmas Eve party where I was the only one not drunk. So I was around a lot of drunk people in the first 2 months, and it was weird. And I still had that peace at the time. So that made it a bit easier. But yeah, it was strange to see them because I was always like probably the first one drunk. And observing people make that switch from, you know, just like buzzed and silly to like really drunk, that was weird for me. And it made me think a lot. And it was surprising too. Like you wouldn't expect it. And then all of a sudden someone's talking kind of weird and you look over at them and they're like crazy looking,
yeah.
You know, their eyes are like totally glazed and they're really drunk. And that was so strange. And I was like, was I like that? Did I look like that? Did I, ramble and repeat myself like that? So it was strange. I did a lot of observing and learning in the beginning and like self-reflection and thinking about myself in the past.
Yeah. And I guess that was quite tough and brought up a lot of emotions.
Yeah, a lot of the shame. And that was probably my biggest struggle in the beginning, was feeling bad about, like, I never hurt anyone or like got in trouble, thankfully, but I would shame myself for the things that I did and the ways that I embarrassed myself. Or I would think about climbing Mount Vesuvius hungover and think about how like I wasted that opportunity, and I just couldn't get these awful memories out of my head. And eventually I did. It took time, but yeah, in the beginning I thought about it a lot, about the past.
Yeah, which is always tough, bringing up that shame. It's amazing. And as you get the deeper into recovery you get, every now and then you get a new thing pop up, and you're like, "Holy shit, I did that." I've got some things I'm so ashamed of, and they're actually not even drug related. They're from like when I was a kid, like adolescent, I guess, and like some of the things that I did that was so cruel, like to animals and stuff, like when I was like a teenager and stuff. And some of the things I get, these things come up and I'm just like, oh my God, like I am sorry. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I can't believe that I was capable of doing that. But kids are dumb, and and like all the things that I've done, and it's like, but sometimes it does make you want to bury your head again, but you can't, because you can walk through it. And I know all my experiences have become a lesson for somebody else, and they're not a waste, and I do think they were wrong, some of the things that I did, but you get to kind of make that right and do something about it. So yeah, not an easy one.
Yeah, and my brain would do like, it would remind me of something and I'd feel terrible, and then it would be like, oh, what about this? What about this one? Do you remember this thing? And it would just like keep escalating the bad memories. But you're right. Like when you just deal with it, it sucks. But then, a month from now, it sucks a little bit less. And now where I'm at, I still remember those things. I still think about them, but I don't feel ashamed of myself anymore. I just feel very sad. I think about it, I'm like, what a sad person that was. I am so sad for her. And I don't feel like it's a reflection on me and who I am. So it took time, but yeah, I never would have had that if I was still drinking. I would still be beating myself up about the same stuff for all eternity.
It's kind of like, all these things that we did, and almost all behavior in my life was a product of some event. It wasn't that I was choosing things. My life was a series of reactions. All the things I did, especially from social pressure, for wanting to fit in somewhere, for wanting to belong, for wanting to be accepted, wanting to be loved, and all the dumb shit that you do because of that, based on who's around you at the time. You'd act totally differently. I would act totally differently to everyone that was around me just to fit into their idea of what was acceptable, or that and that. So it's like I wasn't in control of my life. It was just I was being controlled by social forces. So it's like, those behaviours, I don't think they were a reflection of me. It was actually it was a reflection of my insecurity, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way. That's why I refer to past me as drunk Jill, because it really feels like it wasn't me. And I feel so far removed from that person, and I know that I will never do those things again. And even before I was drinking, I still had the same kind of mindset and attitude about stuff. And I was very, it was easy to offend me and get me emotional. And that was just magnified as alcohol. But now I feel like I've done the work and I am through all that stuff, and I don't have to act that way anymore. And I'm just very calm, and I love it. It's the best feeling.
Yeah. It is amazing being able to deal with these problems in a calm and collective way, because you can have a problem and you can use something to take the edge off that problem, but that is a problem in itself that adds on to the other top of the other problems, because alcohol and drugs don't make you feel better. They put a Band-Aid on over a wound, which isn't healing for a temporary period of time, and then you come out. It's like drugs and alcohol intoxication is guaranteeing that you're going to feel shit. That's what it does. It's like it guarantees you're going to feel bad. It's not like, if you do this, you might feel bad. It's like, if you do this, you will feel like shit soon. It's like, I promise. I promise you're going to feel really bad.
Couple hours from now.
You're going to feel really bad. You know what I mean? You might get a night, or even two if you're on drugs. You might even get 2 nights out of it in a row. But I promise after that, it's going to be really shit. It's like a week of hell. Promise. And it's addiction choosing to go for that kind of long-term. Well, we could go into the science here, because it's kind of a nice segue into the science from that point, isn't it? Because you are a fountainhead of knowledge when it comes to the biological and scientific side of that. And that was a big part of your recovery, wasn't it?
Yeah, that helped me let go of the belief that it was my fault or my choice, or that there was something wrong with me. Everything that I've learned, basically my belief right now is that I had a lot of unfortunate things happen in my life. And, maybe there's some genetic component there too. I can't say that, for sure. But all of those things aligned and just created this mess. And it wasn't because I was a bad person, or it wasn't because anything about me. If someone else was in the same exact situations as me, maybe they wouldn't have had a problem with alcohol, but maybe they would have had a problem with something else. And yeah, I just don't think it's anybody's fault anymore. And I grew up believing that it was people's fault, and that if you did a lot of drugs, or you drank and you stayed miserable and you just lived that way, that you weren't a strong person and that you were choosing to do that. So I had that belief, but then I was doing that, and it was like, wait, am I a weak person? Am I bad? And after learning everything that I've learned, I'm really not. None of us are. I just really think it's not our fault.
There's some really, really interesting. I mean, my personal, views on it aren't necessarily that it's not my fault that I am in that situation through my series of decisions that I've made. But when I'm an addict, I can't choose not to by trying not to.
Yeah.
You know, and you can't choose not to do bad things because of your addiction, because in that, through previous decisions, you've put yourself in a situation where you no longer have a choice.
Yeah, exactly. And you lose control and you lose clarity and the ability to like actually take a look at what's going on and see it for what it is. Like the denial is so strong, and we really believe all these weird things that we tell ourselves. And we look, like you were saying about your friends that were binge drinking and you said your life would be better. We can look at other people and say like, wow, that person really shouldn't ever drink again. But then for me, I was like, I'm not like them. I'm different, you know, when I was exactly the same or worse. And yeah, that I'm very interested in, like the psychology of it and how we can just maintain those beliefs when everything is showing us it's not true.
Yeah. I think from the point of view of the nervous system's trying to tell you to get out of pain. It's like, you're in pain, we need to fix this, and I've got an idea. You know, and it's like, you know, I don't know. I'm not an expert on neurochemistry, but fundamentally, the brain just trying to go for some dopamine. Is that right? Or and endorphins. You can clear that up.
Both are
for
correct.
Us. Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason that we even have dopamine is to reinforce behaviors that keep us alive, like eating, sleeping, and having sex with people. It feels good because we need to do those things to live. And that is how like our brain reinforces doing those things, so then we keep surviving and keep the species going and all of that. But what happens is alcohol and drugs trigger the same thing. And when you drink, for example, your brain releases endorphins, which make you feel good. And then those endorphins go through your brain and they bind to opioid receptors. And that's what triggers the dopamine release. And there's a much bigger burst of dopamine from drugs and alcohol than anything else. So your brain sees that and it's like, wow, if food feels this good, I know food's important, but alcohol feels like 10 times better than that. Alcohol must be super important. And then your brain thinks like, this is number one. This is the priority now. We have to get this thing. It's so good for us. And on top of that, we form beliefs just through our experiences. Like if I'm stressed, alcohol helps me feel better. So now you have the dopamine forming a memory of something that's happening in your life a lot, and it just keeps you in this weird belief system that you need alcohol, like to survive, to live a good life. And yeah, not everyone's going to have that same burst. Like for people, it's going to be different. Like if someone doesn't really like alcohol, but they're addicted to some other drug, alcohol doesn't have a huge burst of dopamine for them. So every brain is different. And then on top of that, like when you drink, like there are some people that slowly develop a problem with alcohol over years, and some people are more susceptible to alcohol changing their reward system. And as it changes the reward system, it releases more and more dopamine and gets the brain to believe it's important. And other people don't have that change. So they just feel like alcohol's fine, like it's nice, and they move on with their life. But yeah, and all of that, I think I'll stop there. But
something that I've heard that's common in addicts is that they actually have less receptors for dopamine. And when they first use something that releases dopamine, it's like the brain, for the first time, actually gets like a good amount of dopamine, and then it just latches onto it like, right, that's it. That's how I'm getting that, because I need that. I need that on a physiological level. I need that burst of dopamine for the body to feel okay. So then it grabs onto it. But then as you keep doing it, and obviously you're becoming dependent on that source, and the more you do it, the dopamine receptors actually diminish. So the few dopamine receptors you already had becomes less and less as you already do it. And it's kind of why, I could be wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like why addiction is, and many things in the world are like, it's like, you know, it's like I don't know what sweets or candy you have there, but you know, when they've got a coating on it and you suck on it for a couple of minutes, and then all the sugary stuff's gone and you're sucking on this tasteless thing, you know what I mean? And it's like every time you go back for, you know, the first time it tastes like that and you keep going back and it's just like chewing the chewed. You're never ever getting that back because you actually can't you're physiologically changed now and you can't have that anymore.
Yeah, that is completely correct, all of that. So not everybody has the same amount of dopamine receptors or like the same amount of serotonin. So some people are more prone to depression, and that could be a chemical thing. So we all have different amounts of everything going on in our body. We're not all the same. And for people that have lower levels of dopamine receptors, they feel like less good. And that might affect them as depression, something like that. And when they drink or use whatever drug they enjoy, all of a sudden their brain's like, whoa, like, here we go. And as you abuse it, you're right. Like your brain starts to believe like this, you know, this is too much. So it reduces the amount of receptors that you have. So then you're doing the same amount, but you're not getting the same burst. And that's a part of tolerance. And that's why we have to keep doing more and more. Like that's why I had to make that second fake Cosmo, because the first one was good, but like it wasn't as good, you know, but the second one, that one was going to be really good. And yeah, it just changes the brain, and it like makes alcohol worse or drugs worse, but we still think like we really need it. So we just do more and more and more and more often. But yeah, that's a big part of the genetic component, like what you have to start with. And that has a huge impact, because if you struggle to feel happy or to feel pleasure, then you're more susceptible to abusing something that makes you feel really good.
Yeah, I think I know we all come into this world in a certain way. I think one of the genes that's present in every addict is sensitivity, isn't it? We're more sensitive than other people, so we get hurt easier, maybe. And I can't help but think, and well, I just believe that, you know, that emotionally, how we feel is totally interrelated to, you know, how our bodies are functioning. And I don't know of any science behind it, but I've heard people talking about that, and how you know, how the mind is totally linked to, you know, the production of chemicals in the body and such. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that contribute to that. So your childhood and like how safe you felt makes your brain form connections, and if you don't feel safe, then you might have different connections, and that changes like how your genes are expressed. So it can start that young. And sorry, I just totally blanked. Can you remind me of your question?
I don't want to have blanked as well, but just basically how the mind is affecting the physiology of the body and the neurochemicals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I know that there's like a whole gut-brain connection and all of that, and how we treat our bodies has a big impact on like how we feel mentally. Like if you eat a lot of really unhealthy food, you might start to feel really depressed. And those are linked, like nutrients and being kind to yourself and getting exercise, like that's all there to keep us happy. And as you treat yourself poorly, you start to become less and less happy. And yeah, that's all the stuff that's going on in the brain.
From my personal observations of my body being a laboratory and mind, I've noticed that when one thing's bad, everything's bad. It's not just like, oh, you don't feel like, binge eating right now, and you're doing exercise, and you want to eat well, and you're peaceful, and everything's good. And then it's not like, oh, and then all of a sudden I just want to binge eat. It's like, no, now you want to binge eat, and you want to eat junk food, and you want to lay in bed longer. And it's kind of like, it's like this emotional thing that goes, that kind of like this mask that, or this, I don't know how to describe that metaphorically. I've got no idea. It's like this front of weather comes in, and it just carries all of these things, and it affects everything all across the board. It's kind of like, you know, it's not like it's just one isolated problem that you can just work on. It's like, so I always go for the emotional thing. It's like, right, I need to fix this on a spiritual level personally. But yeah,
emotions are very, very important, just with all life, but with sobriety too, because emotions become triggers, and the more powerful the emotion is, the more powerful the trigger, and that can make someone, get right back to it even though they don't want to. And I have the same experience where, like, it's not just one problem. It's like all of a sudden now I'm sitting on the couch watching 4 hours of Netflix, and I'm not cleaning my house, and I'm being lazy at work. Like, it's just all a thing. And then you look at it and you're super overwhelmed. And it's like, what can I even do? My whole life is a mess. But you have to start at the source, because those are just symptoms. And you have to treat like what's actually going on inside before all that good stuff can happen. And like when I quit, I don't know if you had the same experience, but I just started respecting myself. And I thought that I deserved good things and I deserved to feel good. So I just naturally started eating better, and I naturally started exercising a little bit more. And where I would get, my hangover cures, like mozzarella sticks and all that, I just completely stopped ordering it because I didn't want it, because it actually made me feel bad. Because I wasn't constantly feeling bad from alcohol, I was able to make the connection between everything else in my life and how it made me feel. So then I was naturally able to just filter out things that didn't feel as good. And that was really empowering. One day I realized, like, wow, I really respect myself, and I've been treating myself very good, and I don't have to try.
When you're intoxicated, you don't even know what feels good or not. You have no awareness of your body and how you feel. If you feel bad, it's just because you've been drinking. It's not because you're ill or your body's trying to tell you, like, no more of this, or, like something that blows my mind. You don't even think about it, but it's like, I don't know why I started thinking about this. Well, probably because it's mental, but it's like I would drink 10 cans of Jack Daniels and Coke, right? And then it's like, but what if you took away the alcohol from that and be like, what would you say if you saw someone drink 10 cans of Coke? You'd be like, you're mental, you're going to die. You would though, wouldn't you? You'd be in shock. You'd be like, don't drink that. That's like 4 times 10, that's like 400 grams of sugar. Don't do it. You're going to die. Definitely. Don't do it. And then, you got to put some alcohol in it. You're like, 400 grams of sugar plus booze. Mental, isn't it? It's actually like unbelievable how the alcohol can just put you into such an ignorant state.
Yeah, we just believe it's the best thing ever, and everything else is less good. And if we have our alcohol, nothing else matters. And yeah, that was just how I lived my life. I don't want to go somewhere if I can't drink. Like, why would I want to go do that? That's boring. But then what I realized is, like, sitting around doing nothing is actually pretty boring.
Yeah, definitely. Being bored is just not a good idea for an addict. Keep yourself busy, and I see that you do that incredibly well. With Sober Powered, you look incredibly driven, and it seems like there's been a theme of that through your life, which is, kind of cool that to actually, I mean, you studied something and it's useful, and you actually managed to keep going it and tying it all together, which is a miracle from studying from a young age, because everything I studied when I was younger made not much sense in the long run. So I've actually had to go back to uni now, and I'm not enjoying. Well, I'm enjoying it a load, but I'm not enjoying the workload. It's pretty intense. And I can't even imagine how much work a master's degree is.
Yeah, and I was actually drinking every single day while I was getting my master's. So I made it harder for myself.
master's in biology sounds hard as well. Sounds pretty technical.
Yeah, and I actually hadn't taken any biology. My bachelor's is in chemistry, and they didn't have us take biology, even though it's very relevant. So I showed up, and I was like this random person, and everyone else had 4 years of biology, and I didn't even know the vocabulary. Like the first week, I just wrote down words that I didn't know so I could look them up later. Like I couldn't even try to understand the class because I didn't understand the words. But it was so worth it. Like school, I think education just opens up so many doors, even if it's just like on your own, on Google, like just educating yourself. Like that's what helped me at least. And why I tell everybody about it.
We have some amazing opportunities to learn stuff now. It's absolutely phenomenal. And some of the authors that are coming out, like Dr. Gabor Mate and a lot of the people who he also learns from, like Dan Siegel. And there's loads of amazing people to learn from now who are kind of putting all the science together in one place, so you can kind of get this really comprehensive and kind of fairly easy to consume all these things, and you can go kind of as deep as you want, can't you? And I'm finding it absolutely amazing. I mean, I as a how would I have viewed myself? Absolutely not an academic person at all. Like, you know, and I just was always out. I would never sit down. I couldn't sit still. Like I had to move because it was too much to sit still. Like I'd just have to move. You know what I mean? It was part of my kind of on that spectrum of that escapism addiction. Like I was addicted to having fun from like the get-go, sugar and fun as a kid, you know, and I just had to be out couldn't be on my own with people all the time. And then, you know, I am the opposite of that now. I sit at a desk nearly all of the time learning, and I love it. I really like it. Like I really, really like I buzz off it a lot. And it's maybe even a little bit addictive from that perspective. So, I do have to watch it and then kind of balance it out and make sure I'm not neglecting the people in my life and stuff. But yeah, oh my God, I find it so, so fun. And as a recovering addict, it's like something that it's really, you know, you kind of got to start learning if you want to get out of addiction, haven't you? Because it's like, what blew my mind is like, it's not recovery. It's like not actually anything to do with drugs, is it?
Yeah, a lot of us just think, just don't drink or use and you're good. You're sober now. But there's so much to it. And I love learning how other people like take care of their recovery. And I think the biggest part is helping other people. And that, I don't know if that inspired you to start your show, but just like sharing information, sharing stories, sharing wins, sharing your shame, all that stuff for the people that don't want to put themselves out there so publicly. I think it helps them. When I first stopped, I was in Facebook groups, and that's where I posted. And I remember I posted about feeling suicidal. And I thought, I'm the only one that feels this way. And people are going to judge me. And like, you know, they might be scared of me and not want to be my friend. And maybe this is a mistake. But I posted about it, and so many comments. And people were messaging me privately telling me that they felt exactly the same way while they were drinking, and they were telling me their story about, unfortunately, some people acted on those feelings, but they're okay now. And just knowing like, wow, other people deal with that too. And I used to feel so ashamed of it, and it helps, like just getting information out there and helping people, I think, is the biggest part of my recovery.
It's for me. It didn't help with my recovery sharing. It caused it. Like I hadn't quit before I started Break the Chain. Break the Chain.
Really?
Break the Chain was me documenting me trying to quit, and
I didn't know that. I need to go back.
And it was a few years ago. How long ago now? Bit more than 2. Because I wasn't using. I hadn't been like, so for me, I hadn't been using since I was, you know, I left England at 23, went to Australia, drank but didn't do drugs really, went back, fucked it up, left again, went away, was trying a bit, drinking a bit, but not really, but was kind of anxious wreck, like really, really not well, like anxiety, like really bad, had a mental breakdown, went back to England, made a complete mess, ended up feeling like suicidal in 3 weeks, hit rock bottom almost on a 3-week holiday. It was unbelievable how, because like it's like you don't even bother trying to restrain yourself. You just like all of it at once, you know, and put myself into a really horrible mental space and left again. I was just like came out there like fried, just like whoa, and then went back. Then like moved to New Zealand. I was like, right, I'm really going to try and sort this out. Stop drinking, quit everything. I felt totally anxious. I had a mental breakdown again. I started binge eating, started making myself sick, eating and being thrown up. And I was just like, this is mental. And then I was like, I started break the chain, started helping people. Well, I didn't start helping people. I kind of just shared my story. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's something in me that wants to get out. Something inside me needs to be said. So I was like, all right, well, I built a website, which for me was just like that's not in my repertoire of things that I can do. I built a website, turned it on, it's like, oh my God, it works. It works. You can type in this email address and this thing actually appears. It's like, oh my God, I've done it. And then I did it and I shared my post, and it's like the scariest thing, like putting my story out there. It's so scary. And I did it, and all this positive feedback. I was like, whoa, you've done the right thing. And keep doing it. And then I kept doing it, not thinking too much of it. And then after about 6 months to a year, I guess, of me sharing all these realizations, because I wasn't drinking and doing drugs, or maybe I was drinking the occasional beer and stuff, but generally I like wasn't doing it, but I wasn't like happy, or I wasn't feeling like I was in recovery or anything. I hadn't followed any program or process consciously. And then after a year, it's like, people are just like, you've done so well for quitting. And I'm like, right, but I haven't actually said I'm never doing that ever again. You know what I mean? Like, how, and I couldn't figure out, because I didn't want to quit, because I thought drugs were fucking great. You know what I mean? Like, I really enjoyed doing it. And I never had, like, I was always kind of really loose, but kind of in control most of the time. Not in control, out of control, sort of, but like never fully blacking out too often or anything like that. But anyway, maybe I was a mess, but I thought it was great. I didn't care what anyone thought too much, or wasn't aware. And then after a year, it's like, you're really helping people, and people are saying that they want to sort their life out because of what you're doing. You haven't even quit. It's like, if you quit, you can help a lot of people. And it was kind of like, it wasn't about me. It was actually about, like, if you quit, this can do a lot of good. I was really stressed out with that. I was just like, how the hell am I going to do this? So I got a sign with Break the Chain made, put it on the dashboard, went on a road trip for 6 weeks in my van and just drove around, and like it was just said, break the chain, break the chain, break the chain in front of my face every day. And I actually like brainwashed myself. After 6 weeks, I was just like, my mind just tipped. And it was like, instead of like thinking about it, because every time you think about quitting, the anxiety and the feeling and it grips you and it grabs your stomach and it twists it, and you're like, ugh. And, you know, it's horrible, isn't it? When even just thinking about quitting is the hardest. It's a mentally painful experience. And then after kind of brainwashing myself, following all these Instagram accounts, following, you know, I was just like, everything around me, I made it about recovery and positive. I started putting all this stuff around me, and then my mind just said, oh, all right then, let's do it. You know, and that was kind of how I quit, and it got serious. So it's been like a really interesting journey.
I love that. And I think a lot of people like listen to shows, or they kind of look at stuff online casually, and then eventually they're like, whoa, look at all these people. And they reach out to me. They're like, well, I'm 6 months sober, but, you know, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it forever. And that's hard. That was the hardest part for me. I used to threaten myself with sobriety. I used to say, if you can't moderate and you can't figure this out, you're going to have to admit that you're an alcoholic and never drink ever again. And I used to threaten myself, and I thought that was going to help me moderate. Like it was a choice that I was, you know, deciding, oh, screw moderation. Like, I don't want to do that. It was horrible. And it's so scary to think about. Like, that scared me. Never drinking again. Like, would life be worth living? And what I've realized is, like, I wasn't living. Like, I almost skipped those years. Like, they're just gone. Like, stuff happened. I got married. I got my master's and whatever, but I don't have any real memories of, like, day to day or feeling good. I just felt terrible all the time and was waiting to drink again, you know?
I spoke about this with Alex in a podcast that I did. I recorded it yesterday. But it's just like, if you need to do something to feel okay, you can never have peace. You can't have any. And if you can't have peace, you can't have happiness. All those things are linked together. And if you have made yourself dependent on something, every time you're not on it, or you're not feeling like you've got the, let's face it, when you're an alcoholic or a drug user, you want to find that kind of equilibrium, and you're always dipping above and below, and you're always trying to hit that sweet point, and you're below, and you're all a bit more, all a bit much, and I've been sick, and a bit less, and you throw up, and it calm down a bit and a bit more, and you always like dip. You never, and occasionally, a couple of times a night maybe, you'll hit that equilibrium. Or with alcohol, I think you hit it once for about 10 minutes and then you're over it.
Yep.
And it's like you just, and as soon as you're not drinking, your mind's poking you. You're trying to sit down, trying to relax your mind, poke, get some booze, poke, and you're just like, you can't have it. You can't have happiness and peace if you, if you're dependent on an intoxicant for feeling okay, which is really tragic, isn't it? Sorry for anyone who's listening who's trying to quit, because it's like so hard. It's just, it is so hard. I know, I mean, have you got any, what would you say to someone who's in that situation now, who wants to quit and is looking for, the first step?
I think this is the first step. Listening to your show, joining a Facebook group or something, or being present on Instagram. I think just getting exposure and learning information from us, and learning that whatever you're struggling with that you think is your own personal suffering that no one understands, you might hear somebody say the same thing that you experience. And yeah, I think that is so helpful, learning like, wow, other people feel this. Like, this is okay for me to feel this. Yeah, I tried therapy, actually. I tried therapy twice, and I was told that I wasn't an alcoholic by those therapists. So I think I normally would say therapy because I do really love it. But sometimes you can work with a therapist who doesn't recognize what's going on. So I think just being willing to be around people like us. I used to post about moderation and like, I'm going to figure it out. I have this new plan. And I would post that in sober groups. Like, what the hell was wrong with me? And everyone was nice. Everybody was so nice because they understood. And they understood that I had my own journey. And I'm sorry if I triggered anybody with my craziness. But people are nice. Post whatever you want to post. We've all been through it, So I think just put yourself out there.
People in the recovery community are profoundly nice. They're
so
almost nicer than anywhere else on the planet, I'm sure. Because, I mean, one of the things I love about doing this podcast, I have some people on the podcast who have done some really bad things, and you talk to them and they are not that person. And they are just so regretful of what they've done, and they're so committed to making the world a better place and actively doing so. And everyone in the community, I mean, part of recovery is going on to help the next person. It's built in, and if you don't do it, you fail. So it's, I think, it's probably almost the least judgmental place you can ever go is somewhere, a place of recovery. And if you're unfortunate enough to find a place where it isn't like that, you just try one more, because I'm sure it'll be fine. Because not everybody is nice always, and especially early on in recovery, we can be a little bit irritable.
Yep, little off.
Yeah. I did want to talk about a couple of other things. So what? Getting off alcohol is dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah,
Can be.
if you're someone who is physically dependent, it can be very dangerous. And that might show up as having the shakes. That's a good sign that you're physically dependent. But people have just had very large quantities of alcohol for a long time, your body like doesn't know how to function without it. Like it's so built into how your brain works that your brain can't relax without alcohol, because alcohol slows down your brain and the speed that messages are sent around. So your brain counteracts that by flooding itself with neurotransmitters that speed up brain activity. So it brings you back up to normal when you're drunk. And that's why, you know, we drink in the beginning to feel good, and then we drink after a while, you kind of said this earlier, just to feel normal. And that's why. And if someone just suddenly stops and their brain is so dependent on alcohol to function, they have all of these excitable neurotransmitters. Their brain is going crazy. Things are going so fast that they may have a seizure. That's like how epilepsy happens even. Like it's just so overexcitable, you have a seizure. And also, on top of that, like your body can struggle to regulate its temperature, regulate your breathing, regulate your heart rate. So it can be very dangerous. It's not just a seizure risk. It's like the intense shock that your body feels when it's like, but I thought this thing was normal. I thought we always had this thing here. And then it's just like gone one day, and your brain can't even handle that. And that's why people, like, medical detox is great. I didn't go personally, but I know a few people who went, and they said, like, that's the reason that they're sober. And they had such a positive experience there, and everyone was so kind to them. So, yeah, it's super dangerous for some people.
It must be really difficult when you're in that situation where you know that you're physically dependent, and you're saying if you have the shakes, that's a good sign that you need a medical detox. And I think if if with alcohol, I know someone that's went into a seizure and then went into a coma from alcohol. I don't even think he'd quit, but it was alcohol related that had happened. So it's not just like if you stop, that's going to happen. It's like from alcohol, being an alcoholic, that can just happen, which is crazy. It's unbelievable. So I think getting some medical advice on that. I'm sure it varies from place to place, but I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of someone who is in that situation. That must be like just stopping on its own is hard enough without having to actually go. It takes a lot of effort, doesn't it, to go find a doctor and actually put yourself through it. But I think, just for safety, it will be worth it. And getting someone else to help you through that situation, being like, I'm in a situation now, like I was in when I was an addict. Like I'm in a helpless situation, can't help myself, and I had to get my friends to actually help me, to do things for me, to actually help me out of that situation because I wasn't capable. Thank you for answering that one. Pretty heavy one. What's the difference between a depressant and a stimulant?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, a depressant would be like alcohol, where it slows down your brain and it makes you feel relaxed, chilled out, and a stimulant excites your brain. That's why, like, Four Loko, I don't know if you guys had that, but it's an energy drink mixed with alcohol, and it killed people, actually, because it's a mixture of both things. So a stimulant does, like, the exact opposite. It hypes you up, and it gets your brain going really fast. So people often think, like, they have an addictive personality and they could become addicted to anything. But if you like things like alcohol, you probably won't go switch to something like cocaine or ecstasy. Like maybe you enjoy that too, but you'd enjoy more something that does a similar thing to what alcohol did for you. So you're only at risk, like, really to switch between, like, stimulants for other stimulants or depressants for other depressants. And, yeah, that's a risk, like trading addictions. That's very possible, too.
I always had my I was addicted to depressants. And is that, does it, like, relax the nervous system as well?
Yeah, so it slows down the speed that your brain is communicating. So the the neurons in your brain, they build up an electrical charge. So they build up a positive charge. And then once they have enough, there's like a big burst, and that's the message that gets sent to the next neuron. But what alcohol does is it floods the brain with the opposite charge. So then if you were going to send a signal, now your alcohol is counteracting the buildup of the charge. And so it will slow down the speed that the brain sends signals, or it'll stop it completely. And that's like in a blackout, like your ability to form memories is just completely stopped. So yeah, it actually prevents your brain from communicating with itself and with your body.
And I think that's what I liked, because I was addicted to ketamine. And I think one of the things that it did is it actually kind of turned the senses down a little bit. So I wasn't, less stimulation, and it kind of like just dealt with the anxiety that I was experiencing. And I know that coming out, like the irritability that I experienced when I was sober was, it was extremely high, and it was like every little thing would just be irritating to me.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I used to get really angry, and I would flip out over very minor stuff, and that's just because we can't regulate our emotions. Like alcohol, it affects all areas of the brain, drugs and alcohol, but there's a huge impact on the parts of the brain that help us control our emotions and think things through and make good judgments. So that gets all like weird and messed up. And then you're not drinking and you're upset about that. And now you can't like self-regulate. So it's easy to just like flip out and be really cranky all the time. But eventually like your brain readapts and it learns like, okay, alcohol isn't going to be here all the time. And we need to learn how to do what we were doing before. So it learns like that it can't use alcohol to do things that it needs to use its own neurotransmitters for.
On a hopeful note, can you speak a bit to neuroplasticity? Because I've kind of found that to be the most hopeful part of everything, really.
Yeah, totally agree. So the way that our brain adapts to alcohol or drugs, like the dopamine burst that we were talking about and believing that it's essential for life, and then the positive associations that we form, like with celebrations or with the weekend, those formed slowly. They weren't just like there. And whatever you used drugs or alcohol for, like whatever your go-to was, you taught that to yourself. Like if you have anxiety, that's an easy one, and you drink to relieve anxiety, that connection wasn't always there. You taught yourself, if I drink, I won't feel anxiety. And just like you taught yourself, you can learn the reverse. You can learn like, I can manage my anxiety, really better without drinking. And in the beginning, like you have these pathways that are so used in your brain that is like, this thing happens, drink. I feel this way, drink. And it's just automatic. And as you make the choice to stay sober, those pathways get weaker. I think the easiest example is like a sidewalk. So if no one walks there, if like the street is shut down, the town is abandoned, things are going to grow and it's going to break down and it's not going to be a nice sidewalk anymore. And that's what can happen with the like automatic thoughts that you have, like, bad day, drink. Eventually you can think, bad day, go to the gym. Bad day, call my friend. And those are your automatic. So you have to learn all these things about alcohol and drugs, and you can equally unlearn them and go back to how you were before. And that's why we get addicted to things, because it's capable of changing our brain. But we can also change our brain back and be like free of those crazy thoughts, like powerful need to drink. Like that can go away.
I think one of the things, especially when you start drinking really young, your brain isn't even developed yet, is it? And you inhibit the development of that. And I think emotions and can actually inhibit the development of the brain as well, can't they? And the orbital frontal cortex, which is the emotional regulation and stuff. If things happen when you're really young, that gets slowed down. And I think a lot of people worry that like drugs have wrecked their brain and they've like brain damaged. Basically, maybe in a few cases that's the case with extreme things. But I think generally the brain's actually an amazingly resilient thing which can heal and change, isn't it?
Yeah. So if you start drinking, for example, very young, as your brain is developing, alcohol can influence it to develop in a different way than it would normally. And the way that it develops makes you much more susceptible to developing an addiction than you would normally be. But that doesn't mean that your brain is like destroyed forever. It just means it's much easier for you to become addicted to alcohol. And then if that happens, like that's the hit that you have. And, things can happen, like the prefrontal cortex is the last to develop, and that's what you use to make good judgment, think things through, and control your emotions. But in sobriety, you can learn those skills. Those are learned skills. And just like children that have experienced trauma, they don't learn how to self-regulate very well, but they can learn that. They're not doomed. Like you can do that work as an adult and learn. It's like emotional intelligence. So yeah, you're not doomed forever because you did something when you were 14 and you didn't even like understand what you were doing.
It's amazing, isn't it? I thought I was a total dumbass. Like you know what I mean? Like I thought, I was a complete nutcase, always doing the most unusual, erratic things and no self-control, and couldn't concentrate, couldn't read a book, flying around the place and just all over the show. And to where I'm at now, and I'm capable of doing way more than I thought I would. I'm really surprising myself with what I'm doing without thinking too much, just by that kind of like that daily, good environment, daily things, daily progress, doing something a little bit every day, exercising those skills, learning and exercising those skills. And it's unbelievable. And, when you're in the world of recovery and you see some people who've been people who've just seen themselves as worthless and useless doing some amazing things, and they've all just turned their life around and done something that they thought was impossible.
Yeah, exactly. And it starts small. Like what you said about starting your website, I had the same experience. I didn't know how to do that. And then you do it and you go to your website for the first time, like on your phone or something. And it's like, whoa, I did that. I built a website. And then your mind's like, if I can do that, what else can I do? And you start building this self-confidence. And the more confidence and belief you have in yourself, the more things you can do. But when you feel helpless and worthless and beaten down, like you need to set a low bar, like just do something little, and then you can do something a little bigger, and then a little bigger, And yeah, I love it. I love just our ability to grow. And like you're going to school, and I love school so much. It's just all great. And you're not like set to be who you are forever. You can be like whoever you want. There are some things that you can't change, like sexual orientation. But if you have a character trait that you don't like and it bothers you, you can change it if you really want to. Like you don't have to stay the same. You're not fated to be the same. Your brain can change and adapt and do whatever you want.
It's a wonderful and incredibly hopeful message. And I think we'll end on that because it's amazing and it's true. And when you're in the recovery world and you get to see hundreds and thousands of people that have done it, you're like, it's possible. So
yep.
Check it out. And you talked about your Facebook group, you've talked about your website, and I don't know how you do it, but your group community I'm one of those people, you put that message, be like, you don't need to be an observer. You can get involved. And I was just thinking, oh, that's me in all groups. I'm just there having a nosy. What's it all about in here? I wonder what I can do in my group. I don't even know how to make people talk to each other properly in my group. We have the meetings where people get involved, but in your group, everybody's very proactive, and it looks like a wonderful little community you've got.
Thank you. Yeah, it took time, and we built trust with each other. But yeah, we really take care of each other in there, and people post whatever, and they know no one's judging you.
Yeah. I guess I've worried a little bit about what might people post. I bet when you first started out, but he's thinking like, oh, this could be pretty sketchy. Like, God knows what people are going to post in there. But I suppose you can moderate that. But I was a little bit scared of that. But I actually opened it up recently. Like, yeah, we're going to go for it and see how it goes. So yeah, I've no idea how to get that going yet. But check out Gill's because it's really cool and it's on the go, and people in there look really nice and supportive. Where can people find the group, or how?
Yeah, if you search Sober Powered on Facebook, there's the cover photo is like DNA with a white background, so it'll stand out. It's the only DNA group.
The website is very, very professional. I was impressed with that. How can people find that?
Also soberpowered.com this time.
How did you get that one? That's a good one. You've got everything almost, haven't you, Sober Powered? It's all very clean.
Yeah, I'm actually top secret, but I'm telling everybody, I'm actually trying to start a YouTube too, which I don't know how to do, but we'll see if I figure it out.
I'm sure you'll figure that one out. That one's not too difficult. The website was definitely more of an endeavor.
That's so hard.
But it's so good. Like, when you actually land on your website, it's very clean and practical and useful. So I think check out that website. It's very cool. Have you got any other stuff? You've got your Instagram and Facebook page as well. I'll put all of this stuff in the description below on whatever platform you're watching it on. If you want to tell people how to find that, is it at Sober Powered for the Instagram?
Yeah, sober.powered.
Well, that's not so good, is it? No, it's because I find it really hard to get a good Instagram handle that's kind of simple. It needs to say. I liked your advice for starting a podcast and naming it. It's like, it's got to do what it says on the tin. And I liked your thought process on that. But it's been really cool having you on, Gill, and it's been really great to meet you. Was you on? I met you through Alika, I think. On the did you speak on the Just 424? On the
No, I didn't actually.
I met you through it though, so it's been amazing, and I'm sure that you'll definitely be on there next year, because what you've had to share has been incredibly valuable, and it's been an absolute blessing to meet you and your friends through that, and I'm really enjoying it. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks, and thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Awesome. Thank you very much.